moving into the elections this fall. Wanted to bring on our guest. Her name is Alex Smith. She's executive director of America's Rising PAC. Let me ask you this. I mean, setting aside for a moment the concept as to whether or not it's good a public policy, Alex, what are your thoughts on this idea of it as good electoral policy, a good political strategy?
Well, I think this is terrible strategy on the part of the Democrats. I mean, polling just shows that most Americans do not support abolishing ICE, and I think that senior Democrats are reading the tea leaves on this and really trying to push their members away from talking about it. But unfortunately for them, they have a very ambitious set of 2020 presidential contenders who are trying their best to appeal to that progressive Bernie Sanders base. And so, this is a good thing for them to be talking about with this base. So it's really putting some of these midterm Democrats in swing districts and in Trump states in a real squeeze.
Let me ask you this. Well, first of all, Alex, tell us a little bit about America's Rising PAC. What is it you guys do?
So we are the GOP's premier opposition research organization. We dig up the dirt on Democrats and watch them all the time, so you don't have to.
I appreciate that very much. So you've been following all of this. So I want to pivot a little bit because this is one of the big stories was this Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Bear with me for a second. I want to play this for you. I'm sure you've heard her talk about the unemployment numbers. Have you been following this at all?
I have.
All right. Well, I want to just so our listeners can hear this. Just hold on one second.
The economy is going pretty strong, right? There's roughly 4% unemployment, 3.9% unemployment. Do you think that capitalism has failed to deliver for working class Americans or is no longer the best vehicle for working class Americans?
Well, I think the numbers that you just talked about is part of the problem, right? Because we look at these figures and we say, oh, unemployment is low, everything is fine, right? Well, unemployment is low because everyone has 2 jobs. Unemployment is low because people are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week and can barely feed their kids.
I mean, this is the problem, right? I mean, this is fundamentally... I've been talking a lot today about the fact that we live in 2 very different Americas. This is emblematic of this. I mean, this is a surreality, isn't it?
It's so ridiculous. And she apparently, I think, went to school for economics.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
This is, the fact that she doesn't understand how the unemployment rate is calculated and the fact that having multiple jobs would not distort the unemployment rate is pretty astounding. And look, I think that, she's someone who out-hustled an incumbent who had clearly grown complacent. Someone who wasn't really doing the shoe leather campaigns that he ought to have been, and she clearly energized a part of her district the entire district that was maybe looking for something different. But if this is the direction that the Democratic Party is going to go into, and keep in mind this was in the same interview, she also, after ignorantly attacking Israel as occupiers of Palestine, then also admitted that she didn't know what she was talking about.
Yeah.
So, I think that, while I encourage younger people to run for office, and I think we actually need more younger voices in Congress and in our state legislators, I think that her particular brand of democratic socialism that's a dangerous path for the Democrats to go down.
Sorry, go ahead, because you were saying.
It sounds great in theory, but when you really press them on the particulars, they're unable to come up with sound explanations for what it is that they believe in.
Well, and this is sort of where we're going down this. I mean, do you think? Obviously, here in Maryland, we've had a couple of these situations. We have a Bernie Sanders candidate, Ben Jealous, got the Democratic nomination for governor. We got Johnny Olszewski, who's got the nomination of the Democrats to run for Baltimore County Executive. You've got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York. I mean, is this the trend for ever more far left, hard left progressives getting these seats?
On the one hand, I think in the short term, that would be great politics for the Republicans because these are such extreme characters. But in the long term, it really does give me pause, and it makes me gravely concerned for the future of our country because, so I'm going to put on my old hat here
Please.
for a second. I used to be national chair for college Republicans, and a question I would often get is, well, why are so many millennials enchanted by socialism. And the answer that I would give is that for most millennials, they don't remember, socialism like our parents and our grandparents' generations do. They think of socialism as IKEA socialism, Scandinavian socialism, Swedish meatballs for everybody.
Sure, yes.
Everyone has healthcare. Everyone's taken care of. And I don't think that they realize how homogenous those cultures are, and how a diverse country like the United States really can't support that kind of system. And they also just don't see socialism for what it is, which is history's failure. And they don't see it for, what it's doing in Venezuela when the inflation rate is 24,000% and people can't access medicine and food. For the sake of our country, I hope that ultimately this fizzles out and cooler heads prevail and more people say, push these candidates on, all right, well, you say that we should have guaranteed jobs for everybody. How are we going to pay for that? Who's going to do that? And really get answers out of them, because I think that people will see that they don't really have an answer. And in fact, even though Bernie Sanders was able to galvanize so much support, I think that there were real questions among a lot of Democrats in that campaign, even about the feasibility of his ideas.
And I think we're going to see that come to the fore here in Maryland. How do folks find out more about America's Rising PAC, Alex?
They can go to americarisingpac.org, or they could follow us on Twitter at America Rising. I
really appreciate this as a segue into our next segment. Thank you so very much for joining us today. We are going to continue to have this conversation. That was Alex Smith, she's the